Alright everyone, it's time for a holiday special here, mostly talking about the year in review. I'm not going to talk about my expectations for the next year because I think the plan tomorrow on Happy Homelands with Ramsey Paul is to do that. So I'll just wait, and I think that'll be the basic crux of our conversation tomorrow. By the way, Happy Homelands, look up Ramsey Paul. For those few of you that are notified of this video at all, you can peruse that. Also remember, I am shadow banned. There are links in the description. I'll also pin a comment, but I'm not going to get into it much today because it's fucking Christmas. By the way, I do say Merry Christmas. I have no problem with that as a non-Christian. I am a pagan. Technically, what I'm celebrating is Yule, but the commercialized Christmas that the average Westerner engages in, it's not really Christian or pagan or anything. It's the Coca-Cola company. That's okay. Capitalism is a good thing as long as it doesn't become artificially monopolistic. By the way, I will be doing a slightly edgier BitChute Merry Christmas video as an exclusive today, so you should definitely join me there when you see this, because, yeah, have some fun. Maybe I'll eat a raw egg with ketchup on it, or something crazy like that. It's time that 2021 is going to be an edgier year, I think, for me, because all tech is becoming more important. There's far less constraints on material on all tech. Ergo, I get a little bit more breathing room than I've had on YouTube for the last couple of years, so stay tuned. There's going to be some fucking fun there. But anyway, so happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Kwanzaa, you know, the non-existent holiday that I believe was created by extremists, if I remember correctly, Hanukkah, or Chanukah. There's 4 or 5 different spellings of it that I saw just when I was studying it in elementary school, and, you know, to this day I have no clue how it's technically pronounced. And Yule, of course, last but not least, my holiday, technically speaking. The year in review for 2020. Oh, what a fun year it's been. I mean, it's a wild ride to the point where, at the very least, it's entertaining. Do you remember how things were in, like, 2010, 2011? How fucking boring they were? Or before that, like, the end of the 2000s. We've gone through these periods of time, like, 2001 is exciting, because you get 9/11. 2002, a little bit boring. This is the government trying to spy on you every day. 2003, we invaded Iraq. Well, that's not boring. We get to see death tolls on CNN every day. They stopped doing that after a few years. 2004, you know, you have an election, but there's no choice, so nobody cares. And really, you have to wait till Katrina at the end of, like, 2006 before anyone cares again. And then Obama gets elected, and that's kind of a hip thing. But really, up through until the end of his presidency, you got like 5 years of doldrums in between. Mitt Romney, who cares about him? Then you get 2016, that's exciting, but even like 2017, 2018 and stuff, things are a little more boring. Like, Trump helps to prop it up by making weird tweets and stuff, but other than Trump, you know, for several years there, everything else was still extremely boring. 2020, definitely not one of the boring years. Between the election fiasco and the pandemic and everything else going on in the world, it's like people have lost their collective fucking minds, actually. I think that the big news of the year is the pandemic, but also I wanted to give my obnoxious fluff piece of the year award. I think I'm going to give it, if I remember correctly, it was The Atlantic that made their Whitmer article back in June. They win the most obnoxious fluff piece of the year award for saying that they couldn't even find any Republicans that disliked Whitmer. A few days before thousands of militia members showed up to protest at the state capitol, and she flipped out, and then she got smacked down by her own state Supreme Court, and she did a reach around through the Health Bureau, actually, and I think that got smacked down, and now Whitmer's facing potential impeachment, not from the right wing, not from the anti-lockdowners, but from people on the left that were, I think, pissed that she used too much police force. How fucking great is that? So she's facing impeachment. Now, hopefully she gets removed from office. Fucking good riddance. So that's the main fluff piece of the year. So you get an award for that, Atlantic. I believe that was the outlet. They sort of run together, though. At the end of the day, Washington Post, Atlantic, all the other Huffington Post, aren't they all basically the same? They even seem to rip one another off. Most of it comes from the AP, and they still want you to trust them as well. When's the last time, by the way, that you heard about the AP spying scandal back in the mid-2010s? They don't bitch about it anymore. They're too focused on Orange Man. As far as the pandemic goes, we've had, I mean, in the last few weeks, we've had arguably some of the most major news. Everyone has forgotten almost about the fact that this is the result of Chinese state government policy and the hierarchical system that is communism there. slowing down potential response to disasters and so forth because of the very stringent chain of information gathering. People have mostly forgotten about that. So now they mockingly call it the Trump virus, even though it was in multiple nations before it got to the United States, especially China and Italy. I don't see them calling it the Italian disease either, which is ironic. They would rather fixate on the tertiary country that got infected as the result of multiple other countries having shitty healthcare systems. But it's the news of the year, the pandemic and the election. But on YouTube, you can't talk about that so much. Maybe on the BitChute Merry Christmas exclusive, we'll delve slightly more into that. I thought it was funny, though, Biden going on Colbert the other day. And oh my god, what a fucking fluff piece. Talking about how he decorates his Christmas tree and stupid shit like that. He's got like an 8-minute fucking tweet up just on that fucking subject on his own official Twitter. You can expect, by the way, that to happen quite frequently. 2020, though, despite the political fiasco, despite, the pandemic and stuff, I think there are signs to be optimistic about, which is what you saw in 2016, and this is pretty objective analysis here. In 2016, the American people in particular, but in the lead up to that with Brexit and other things throughout those few years, you saw an attack upon the old establishment by working and middle class individuals in the West who are tired of it. The establishment has been robbing them, has been treating them badly. You've got politicians that in some cases openly state hostile things towards them and act like they're less than human because they happen not to be, one of their rich buddies. And people got tired of it. And they made political decisions and elected a bunch of people to represent their populistic interest. And they won, by and large, in these struggles. What you've seen over the last few years is the establishment has buried its head in the sand and refused to reform its behavior, realizing why populism became popular. Instead, they've doubled down on the censorship and the abuse. You've still got deplorables moments regularly. You had Swalwell a couple years ago talking about how he wanted to nuke the American citizens if they wouldn't give up their AR-15s. Now we find out he was banging Fang Fang, the Chinese spy. The MSM, by the way, not conducting any reasonable realm of journalism around this. And what's happened now is that people's anger is no longer at the ballot box, it's out in the streets. People have begun to fight back, as you've seen in multiple instances, against far-left rioters. They're refusing to obey. You've got entire towns sometimes openly flaunting lockdown policies and so forth. People have begun to fight back in a more visceral sense. It's no longer being decided in the political system, and part of that is that they didn't have any particular trust in the election. In the United States, of course. Nor will they elsewhere. You're beginning to see a patchwork world develop, in which some states and some countries have veered off into far leftism, and other countries, they've gone the other direction. They're embracing some combination of traditionalism and populism. You see this with Poland's decision and Austria's decisions literally within this last week. Poland is proposing legislation that would fine companies, if they censor users for anything that's not outside of the realm of Polish law. Now, it's symbolic, but it is a proposal that they've made. You've got a competing proposal from Austria, which is run, I believe, still by that dude from the Green Party, so commie-light, and they're proposing that they're going to fine companies if they don't remove hate speech and things like that under Austrian law. You've got the battle lines being drawn. Some nations, some states, some individuals are on the side of liberty, free speech, and civilization. And then you've got the scumbags on the other side. You've got the corporatists who are oddly aligned with some elements of the left, although certainly not, even now, I think a majority of them. And the corporatists and the billionaire class against literally everyone else, and they control multiple countries. So you've got on one side, you got the populists in the U.S., along with, again, libertarians, certain elements of the left, ironically enough, fighting against corporatists. They're enjoined by the Hungarian and Polish governments and a few others. Now, the Brazilian government, you could argue, is vaguely populistic in some ways. And then on the other side, you have China. You have the UK, it seems, for the most part. The French and the Germans, totalitarian governments, essentially. Governments that engage in tyranny. And so you have this this struggle that has not gone away. What the establishment wanted was that if they just honk honk, have a fair election, and put away that evil orange populist in the U.S. If they screw around with the people of the UK and really twist the knife on trade and fishing deals and stuff, if they just try to make Bolsonaro a pariah, like when he got COVID, they're like, oh, well, maybe he'll die. Oh, see, his policies don't work. If they just keep doing this, if they double down on the same shitty behavior that led to people lashing out against them, that somehow it'll go away. Instead, it's had the opposite obvious effect, which is populism, libertarianism, elements of civ-nat-ism have grown. Leftism has in some cases, the leftists have grown up and they've given up the anti-gun shtick and they're arming up because they're afraid or they're angry. People have begun to lose it. And so I think we're going to see a lot of crazy shit in 2021. Oh, I don't think 2020 will be considered crazy in regards to comparing it to the subsequent few years. It's just a matter of when people snap entirely and then things, you have a dust up and then the hope is things go back to being relatively calm, minus maybe the neoliberal corporatism and the corporate censorship. But we'll see. Maybe they win. Maybe we enter a totalitarian age in which the left begrudgingly realizes and finally admits how bad communism is because they end up working in a fucking gulag. That's possible too. So yeah, Merry Christmas. A little bit of the year in review there. Other than that, yeah, as far as content creation goes, other than the constant attacks by, mainline tech on its own content creators, everything there is going well. Shit, look at the number of active users on any of the alt-tech sites at the beginning of the year compared to now. Literally any of them. It doesn't matter. The smallest or the largest. I think the smallest would probably be Brighteon. The biggest, it'd probably be Gab or BitChute, I would assume. Maybe Minds. There's no comparison. Over the last year, over these last almost 365 days, the growth has been massive. And it's largely because of mistakes the establishment tech sites are making. Literally exactly overlapping with the mistakes being made by establishment political and social forces causing populism to grow, and elements of far leftism, including the non-cucked proportion of it that isn't afraid of loud noises, isn't afraid of edgy humor. They used to be a tiny minority. Now it's becoming more of a mainline left-wing movement, just as the old neocon right of Hail Ronald Reagan has basically died out in favor of populism, elements of quasi-libertarianism, and nationalism. I fail to see the problem, by the way. It's sort of the culmination of the movements of 2016 or 2015, only now it's not just, hey, I'm going to vote for someone who represents kind of my views. I'm going to have those views and I'm going to bicker about it myself. Why do you think the censorship is ramping up? They're not doing it because they think they're winning. They do it because they think they're losing. They're afraid of you. When you cut out a man's tongue, you're just proving that you're afraid of what he has to say. You're not doing anything else. When Twitter tries to silence Trump, when Jack Dorsey openly muses about, well, maybe after the January 20th, he can be banned by Twitter, do it. Please ban Donald Trump from Twitter so that another 10, 20 million people end up using your alternatives. It'll kill your site. Good riddance, by the way. Jack Dorsey he deserves to live under a bridge, and he looks like he already does. Fucking scumbag. That's about all. Peace out.